Can Ukraine change the course of the war as world leaders, including China, gather for peace talks in Davos?
Iraq recalls its ambassador from Tehran after Iran said it had launched missiles at targets in Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdistan region.
Succession, The Bear and Beef dominated the 75th annual Emmy Awards last night.
China, the European Union, Ukraine and the United States. These are the countries that will present their view on how to rebuild trust. Chinese Premier, Ukraine's President, the US National Security Advisor and the European Commission President are all in Davos at the World Economic Forum annual meeting on Tuesday. The big question is whether China's Premier will sit down with Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine's allies. China was not attending Ukraine's peace formula talks on Sunday at the National Security Advisors level. Could Kyiv change this and bring on board one of Russia's closest allies? Sasha Vakulina for Euronews from Davos.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky in Bern with his Swiss counterpart Viola Amherd. At his request, Switzerland on Monday agreed to host a global peace summit that aims to bring an end to Ukraine's war with Russia. Ukrainian and Swiss teams will begin preparations for the gathering as early as today.
Я вдячний пані президенту, її команді за домовленість, що наші команди вже від завтра розпочинають підготовку до проведення у Швейцарії на рівні лідерів глобального саміту миру.
Wir wollen einen breit abgestützten Gipfel, bei dem möglichst viele Länder teilnehmen, damit wir auch einen Erfolg haben.
Russia has not been involved in the process. Neutral Switzerland has, however, acted as a broker to resolve conflicts before. Zelensky then flew to the Swiss resort of Davos, where he's due to attend the annual World Economic Forum. National security advisors from 83 countries are already there discussing Ukraine's 10-point peace plan that outlines Kyiv's terms for ending the war with Russia.
The spectre of inflation continues to trouble Europe's economy, even if the battle is gradually wearing down. That's a common theme among leaders at the World Economic Forum. In an interview with Euronews, a top official with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development said the Red Sea's crisis is posing a new risk.
The core inflation remains substantial, and everybody understands that fighting core inflation is a lengthy and more painful process. Moreover, the war in the Middle East, and in particular disruptions to shipping, mean that there's always a danger of increase in energy prices that would fuel inflation.
A potential trade conflict between China and the US could also have a negative impact on Europe's climate goals, Jaworczyk believes.
My fear is that escalating trade tensions may lead to new restrictions of exports of critical raw materials and therefore may jeopardize green transition.
Combating climate change is one of the major themes here in Davos, and in fact, reaching net zero by 2050 is one of the main goals of the European Union. That's why the European Commission has its EU climate law. It's also presented its European Green Deal with a tsunami of various plans and regulations that will impact business and consumers in the next few decades. But what has changed now compared to back in 2019 when the European Green Deal was presented is the political climate. We're no longer seeing, for example, the Friday for Futures marchers out on Fridays. The Greta Thunberg movement has also silent, and also politically across the continent of Europe, the Greens are not doing as well as they would have hoped. For more on what she hopes will be changing regarding that topic here at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, we spoke to Joa Mehta. She's the co-founder of Stop Ecocide International.
For the first time, we've been invited to actually contribute to the conference itself. I'm going to be speaking on a couple of panels, and I'm going to be talking, of course, about ecocide law, which is the recognition of mass damage to nature as a crime, a serious crime.
And what about the topic in general politically? Are you concerned slightly about the fact that, the Greta Thunberg movement has died out a bit, the Fridays for Future movement has died out, and also politically, the Greens are not doing so well, and we've elections this year, and people perhaps won't be voting with these issues on their mind?
I have to say I'm not particularly worried about that, because when we look at how things are developing, both in various national jurisdictions but also regionally, for example at the EU and globally, we're seeing a clear legislative direction of travel. People are moving towards this recognition of ecocide, and I think that's partly, in a sense you could say that conversation was triggered by things like the school strikes movement and those sort of climate protests. But I think what it's made people understand or realise is that we're lacking that external framework for safety going forward into the future. It almost doesn't matter what solutions we put in place if we don't prevent the mass destruction of ecosystems. None of those are going to work long term.
Jojo Mehta there, remaining optimistic despite the lack of progress made in Dubai before Christmas at the COP28. Eve McMahon, Euronews, Davos.
A destroyed building in the city of Erbil, the capital of Iraq's semi-autonomous Kurdistan region. Iran on Tuesday said it had launched ballistic missiles at what it claims was the regional headquarters of Israel's spy agency Mossad. Local officials say 4 civilians were killed and 6 others injured in the attack, which took place near the United States consulate compound. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says its strikes in both Iraq and neighbouring Syria were in response to what it called the recent crimes committed against the Islamic Republic. The US has condemned the strikes, describing them as reckless and imprecise. They come at a time of heightened tensions in the region, amid fears that the ongoing war in Gaza will spread, threatening security across the Middle East. On Tuesday, Iraq recalled its ambassador from Tehran for consultation and has summoned the Iranian chargé d'affaires in Baghdad in protest against the Kurdistan attack.
Israel says its army is ending its intensive ground operation phase in Gaza after gaining control over the northern part of the territory. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant added the military will soon expand its control over the southern part of the Strip as well. The briefing came as Hamas issued unsubstantiated claims that 2 Israeli hostages had died in Israeli shelling. Gallant went on to justify Israel's strategy in Gaza.
אם תיפסק האש, יחרץ גורלם של החטופים לשנים ארוכות בשבי החמאס. ללא הלחץ הצבאי, איש לא ידבר איתנו. ללא הלחץ הצבאי, לא נצליח להגיע לשום הסכמות. רק מעמדה של כוח ניתן לשחרר את החטופים.
Images released by an NGO show Burej refugee camp razed to the ground after Israeli forces withdrew. The UN continues to complain that access to aid deliveries of medical supplies, fuel, water and sanitation equipment to northern Gaza has been denied several times in a row since late December.
While there have been some steps to increase the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, life-saving relief is not getting to people who have endured months of relentless assault at anywhere near the scale needed.
Almost 85% of the population are reported to have fled their homes.
The Polish opposition party disrupted parliamentary proceedings on Tuesday, calling for the immediate release of 2 former government officials, Mariusz Kamiński and Maciej Wasik. Last week, the 2 MPs were arrested at the presidential palace after a Warsaw court sentenced them to 2 years behind bars for abuse of power for actions taken in 2007. The Polish president, Andrzej Duda, initially pardoned them in 2015 for the same crimes. However, legal experts have questioned the validity of the act. Duda announced last Thursday he had launched a new process to pardon them again.
Former President Donald Trump has made a strong, decisive start in the race for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Projections had him easily taking Iowa, leaving his closest rivals far behind. A clear victory is crucial as Trump reinforces his grip on his party at the outset of the GOP's nomination fight. Rivals, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, were left competing for second place. The pair knew Iowa would not be a successful canvassing ground. New Hampshire, the next state, has far more independent voters. Despite bone-chilling weather, the public endured the life-threatening cold and dangerous driving conditions to participate in meetings that unfolded in hundreds of schools, churches and community centres across the state. But the message of the night has been unmistakable. Trump's nomination to become the Republican Party's presidential candidate for a third consecutive time is his to lose.
Despite freezing temperatures, residents of Iowa in the United States voted on Monday in the first caucuses of the country's 2024 presidential race, with former President Donald Trump taking over half the Republican votes in the nominating contest.
It was a commanding win for the former president, a record-setting one in fact. Donald Trump's win in the Iowa caucuses confirms his control over the Republican Party and sends a resounding message that the party's 2024 presidential nomination is likely to be his. Of course, a lot can happen from now until the presidential election in November, and in Trump's case, several trials await him, which could turn him into a convicted criminal. That did not keep passionate Trump supporters, though, from giving him the momentum here to go on and win the next primaries, possibly starting with New Hampshire next week. In his victory speech here, the former president promised to solve the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza as well, and maybe surprisingly to work with Democrats if he is elected again. His main opponents, Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, put a positive spin on their results, but they did languish far behind Trump in the end.
Argentinian star Lionel Messi has become the first footballer to be named FIFA Men's Player of the Year for the third time. Unable to attend the ceremony in London, his award was accepted on his behalf by the event's co-host Thierry Henry. Spain's World Cup winner Aitana Bonmatí took the award for Best Women's Player, while England boss Serena Wichmann won the Best Women's Coach for the second successive year and a fourth time. And Manchester United's Mary Earps collected Best Women's Goalkeeper award.
Jose Mourinho is leaving AS Roma with immediate effect. After its 3-1 loss against Milan on Sunday, the club now risks missing the Champions League for a sixth straight season. Mourinho was in his third season at Roma. He led the club to the UEFA Conference League title in his first season and the European League finals last year, but his behaviour towards referees has often been controversial. He was suspended from the Milan game this weekend due to his protests. Former Roma captain Daniele De Rossi and Antonio Conte are possible contenders to take over. Succession, The Bear and Beef dominated the 75th annual Emmy Awards last night. Succession, the HBO saga of a squabbling wealthy family and their media empire, won its third Best Drama Series prize, alongside prizes for Kieran Culkin, Sarah Snook and Matthew McFadden.
This is a show about family, but it's also about when partisan politics gets, partisan news coverage gets intertwined with divisive right-wing politics. And after 4 seasons of satire, as I understand it, that's a problem we have now fixed.
The Bear, the dramedy about a talented chef working at a rundown sandwich shop, won Best Comedy Series. It also made a meal of the comedy acting categories, with Jeremy Allen White, Ayo Edebiri and Eben Moss Backrack all awarded. All 3 were first-time nominees.
What's good?
Netflix breakout Beef won Best Limited Series. It won 5 awards in total, including for actors Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong, who became the first woman of Asian descent to win a lead acting Emmy.
Sometimes I wanted to judge him. Sometimes I wanted to make fun of him.
Quinta Brunson of Abbott Elementary won the Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. Other nominees for the award were Christina Applegate in Dead to Me, Rachel Brosnahan from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Natasha Lyonne for Poker Face, and Jenna Ortega in Wednesday.